I think we had technological issues which hopefully have been resolved, and hopefully you can see us and hear us again now.
Can you just put a little comment on the comments, just if you can see us and can hear us now?
Yeah, that would be really great if someone could do that.
Sorry about that, guys.
It's typical, isn't it?
We're just going to carry on like you can see us and can hear us, because we're not sure what's going on at the moment. I think that's the best thing to do.
So I think that is the best thing to do. So yeah, as I was saying about when you're feeling anxious. So Sarah's put hello, so I'm assuming that means that we're all good again.
Okay.
Well, hey. So yeah, as I was saying about that, it's important with that adrenaline that we've got coursing through us is to expel it in some way.
Definitely.
So to do things like going for a run or going for a walk, or what I've sometimes done before in the past is just had like a really cold shower, because that kind of makes it all go away, because your body then goes from one extreme to the other, which it can be beneficial in the long term. Definitely. So let's move on to the next question. Sarah, there may be pink lions though. If they were pink, again, it wouldn't be so scary, I don't think.
It really wouldn't. No.
So the question is, I can relate feeling like I need to run or fight. Is it okay to have these urges?
Yeah, of course it is. It's totally normal. It's a human response, like we were saying before. It's going to happen. Those responses are completely normal and human responses. It's how we manage it and how we learn to deal with those sort of knee-jerk reactions, and how we manage it, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, it's about shifting your energy as well. I wanted to say before we move to the next question, but it's about shifting your energy. And for me, I do yoga, and that really, really helps for me to just like a lot of breathing techniques and a lot of just trying to shift that energy and sort of doing some really core exercises as well that sort of like get rid of that adrenaline that we were talking about, and it's moving that energy over into a positive energy. So it's a lot about that
it's
as well.
Just going back to what we were saying in the previous question, it's an absolute normal response. Again, in caveman days, they would obviously hunt for their food, and it would mean that they would need to be on this constant fight alert should a saber-toothed tiger try to attack them, or should a neighboring tribe try to steal their food or anything. So that fight response is like absolutely normal.
With psychological anxiety, I think overthinking can be an absolute, really, really toxic, really difficult to manage. So a lot of things, something that I do quite often is sitting down and writing down a lot of things that I'm feeling and everything and want to work through. And that really helps me to sort of like just get a different perspective and really sort of get it out of my head and onto paper and be able to look at it and decide, right, okay, am I being rational about this? Am I being logical about this? And what can I do to reduce my anxiety around this? Can really help. Just the pure fact of getting it out of my head and onto paper can be really, really anxiety reducing.
I think we do get stuck in our own head sometimes, and I think it's what tends to happen is thoughts become fact if we resonate over it for too long, and that in itself will produce anxiety, and it might make us want to fight or fly away from a situation.
Exactly.
So I think it is really important to bear in mind the psychological anxiety as well as normal everyday anxiety. So let's move on to the next question. So Sarah's saying breathing techniques really work for me too. I find being around animals is very calming for me too. Yeah, do you know what? They can have like an absolute calming nature and effect, and animals and therapy is something that goes back for quite a while, I think, and it can be very beneficial in sort of managing us. I know that my cat can be very, very helpful when I've been sort of anxious.
I think it's really good to try and find things like that, isn't it, that are able to de-escalate us in situations where we need that de-escalation. And everyone's different as well. I think that's really important to say. Like, everybody's so different. Everyone perceives things in different ways, and different things help different people. But I think it's really worth trying to keep an open mind and trying new things, especially like meditation as well. That's something that's actually proven to really, really reduce anxiety and stress. And I never thought I'd like yoga ever. I was like, I'm not doing yoga. That's not for me. That's just not the sort of person that I am. I don't do yoga. And I did it, and it really, really helped me. I was in lockdown at the time, looking after 3 children and about to lose my mind. And I really, really needed some sort of structure and something to kind of burn off my anxiety. And half an hour walk wasn't cutting it a day. So doing that yoga really, really did help me. But the motivation, I was really lacking the motivation massively. But I had to sort of wean my way into it and just take little steps, to actually get there. I had to put my yoga mat out and then sit there with my cup of tea, looking at my yoga mat for about 5 minutes, and then get to the point where I'm going to put the yoga music on now, and I sort of like weave my way into it. And then after a couple of times of doing that, it became a habit, and then it was actually really, really helpful. And how I felt mentally after doing that exercise as well really, really helped me to be able to cope with things better.
Yeah, and that's something I obviously talk about a lot here is sort of getting into that mindset of doing it. It's a bit like you said, at first you were like, nah. No, and then exactly. But the more you did it, the more benefit you got from it, and the more you felt it was helping it. And it just sort of became part of your routine. And again, having that kind of routine is also incredibly important.
That's why it's important to stay open-minded and try new things. So if something you tried before didn't work, try something different. Stay open-minded, keep trying new things, because you might find something that can be really useful.
Yeah, we've got a comment here. My Marley is my rock, not sure I'd function without him. See, again, it just goes back to that importance of animals sometimes when we've got them in our lives, family pets and that kind of thing. Definitely. They can be incredibly beneficial in helping us to sort of maintain, and it also gives us structure as well, because obviously things like, we do need to feed them. If it's a dog, we need to take it for a walk, that sort of thing. So again, it's because we've got to look after them as well. There is that purpose of maintaining them as well as ourselves.
Definitely.
And Sarah's saying, Gemma, so relate to making anxious thoughts into facts. I'm the queen of overthinking and making mountain out of molehill, so to speak. Sarah, I hear you on that one. I used to be very similar.
I think with a lot of things as well, just because we can, our beliefs are a lot of the time, sometimes they can be really negative, and actually just because we believe something doesn't make it fact. And I think realizing that and being aware of that that's where you're able to sort of change your mindset around it.
Yeah.
Just because we believe something is a certain way, or that it doesn't make it fact. And you are able to change the way that you look at things.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Right. Shall we move on to the next question then? What are some of the past experiences that have left you with anxiety?
Go first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's mix it up and I'll go first. Yeah. So like I said at the start of the live, and for those people that weren't present when I did, so my first one was kind of university. So I went into this uncomfortable situation where I didn't know anybody, where I had no idea about me as an individual, and it was all new. It was scary. It was moving away from home for the first time. So it was all these normal, natural feelings that I guess anyone would have starting university, but it kind of escalated into feelings of not being good enough, feelings of sort of the unknown and whether I'd be able to do this and that kind of thing. And it kind of just, without catching it and actually managing it, it quickly sort of escalated into depression and isolating myself, and then promptly sort of moved on to things like having very low self-esteem and very low confidence in myself that I'd actually be able to achieve anything, and I think even a little bit in high school, maybe some anxiety was sort of around there, because things like bullying, and like Robbie's just said, they're bullying from a young age. Exactly. Those words and those actions of people can have like a massive impact.
Huge.
And hair color, I was ginger, that was just like I was a target almost.
I'm the same color as Gemma. I'm a redhead too, and I dye my hair. I've dyed my hair jet black since I was 13 years old, because I was picked on so much at school. I actually I'm 35 next week, and I still have a complex about it. Love it on other people, I think it's beautiful, but for myself, I'm not able to bring myself to go back to my natural colour. And a lot of people say you should go back to your natural colour, and so for some reason I just can't do it, and that's because of there's a lot of other things that sort of affected me. But it
can be a big thing, and it's a sad thing really, that people need to pick on other people because of their colour. Their hair is different, and I was the same as you. Sort of in my early 20s, I would dye mine as well, because I was almost like that was one of the sole reasons I was picked on. So if I dye my hair, I'm not going to get picked on or looked at so much.
And also feel better, because obviously that's a negative thing,
But also to a certain extent, what I realised afterwards was that I'm hiding who I really am as an individual.
Exactly.
So hence why now I am all empowering and all about it. I think the other thing that kind of did me in terms of my past experiences was being in a abusive relationship in the past. So it was just sort of a couple of years into university, probably an impact from the self-esteem and confidence issues, and that kind of left me in a position where I didn't trust men for a very long time. And I would get into relationships that were very not similar, but be a relationship with people that weren't sort of what I'd call, they weren't a good relationship. Toxic. That's the word. And that kind of led onwards to being very untrustworthy and just not having this ability to feel like I should be in a relationship or worthy of a relationship. And then obviously I am now quite happily settled in one. But that was having to manage all those anxieties and having a man patient enough to actually manage those anxieties with me, I suppose. So what about you then?
So what was the question? What are some of the past experiences I've lived with myself? So bullying, definitely some of those, a lot of bullying, middle school and high school. So that led to my low self-worth. It led to me not feeling like I was enough. A lot of other things for me as well. But so definitely around high school and bullying, sort of, and then that impacts like Gemma's did into her adult life, not feeling good enough, settling for people that aren't very nice and that aren't healthy, because you don't feel like you deserve to have a healthy relationship, like you just don't deserve to be happy. It can be really detrimental to your well-being as you grow older with that sort of thing. So definitely bullying, past experience of anxiety, and pretty much everything leads to anxiety for me. I think there's lots of things that lead to anxiety for me, so I can't really pinpoint anymore.
It can be hard sometimes.
There's lots of different things.
That can be hard. So Sarah's just replied to Robbie there, so I can relate to you there. It destroys your self-esteem, doesn't it? And again, that's going back to what we were talking about, is, obviously we were bullied in high school and middle school, and therefore that impacted on our self-esteem, probably a little bit chipping away at it slowly but surely. And then if it's not addressed early enough, it then leads to problems as you get older. And it can be hard to forget what people have said, but I like to sort of think, they may have done that for, as weird as it sounds, like maybe they were insecure themselves. I know a lot of people say about bullies and that they have their own anxieties, they have their own issues, then maybe their home life isn't as fantastic as yours is. And I think that's the thing, is sometimes is looking at it from that perspective as well. It doesn't make it any better, I'm well aware of that, but it does kind of help you to sort of forgive and let go of what you've experienced.
And I think as you get older, it's about challenging that belief as well. Like for me personally, like only recently I've got to the point where I constantly hear like a background noise in my head of negative thoughts about myself. So lots of thoughts, especially you're not good enough, you're not enough, you can't do that, you're not enough, and having to, like, literally about 6 months ago, I decided I'm going to challenge it, because I was done hearing it. I was so fed up of listening to the same negative stuff over and over again in my head that I got to the point I was like, right, I've got to do something about this, because unfortunately those negative thoughts were making me feel more depressed. So what we think generally becomes what we feel. And it manifests into, like, it's really can be really destroying for our mental health, not great at all. So I had to challenge it, and what I did was, when I had one of those thoughts come in, like you're not enough, I literally flipped that thought over. So I was like, no, you are enough, And at the beginning it was like I'm just lying to myself, or like it felt a bit silly, and it felt like, oh, it's not actually it's not actually going to change anything. But after a few weeks, it got to the point where I was sort of like, actually, maybe I am enough. And I actually started thinking, maybe what if I am enough? What if I can do this? And I actually started to feel better. And that's when I decided to go for a completely different job, chuck myself completely out of my comfort zone and just completely wing it. But I wouldn't have done that if I didn't feel like I was enough, or like I wasn't good enough, So you are able to actually change the way you feel through changing your thoughts. And I think that's really important. And the same with anxiety, it's exactly the same thing. You are able to challenge it.
So I guess you kind of are like an example of how sort of challenging those thoughts is allowing someone to be able to sort of achieve what they want from life.
100%.
So if you put that work in and actually challenge those thoughts on a daily basis, okay, it's hard work. It's not going to happen overnight. There is no overnight fix. But if you keep doing it, it's literally, you're going to reap the benefits, because now here you are.
Exactly.
And it's amazing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I would never have done. I would have jumped out of my comfort zone if I was still in that thought process of, oh, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. So just by challenging that one thought, I've actually changed. I've gone down a completely different career path and completely down a different, alley, and I'm much happier for it. So it is changeable. But it also, like Jemma said, it is hard work and it does take a lot of effort. But you can do it, and it is just about repetitiveness. It's going over again. Almost like it got to the point where I was like frustrated with the feeling of feeling so low, and I was like, you know what, I'm so done hearing this negative rubbish, every day, and I had to do something about it. And I literally just changed one thought, and it changed how I feel generally about myself. And it's still an ongoing thing. It's not something that's completely changed, but I challenged it enough to be able to actually feel it for once, it was pretty amazing. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that is really good.
Stuff.
That is really good. Right, next question.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So, how can I tell if my
it's gone.
Back in. Seriously, how can I tell if my thinking is giving me anxiety?
Okay.
So I guess this would go back to what you were saying about the thoughts sort of being constant to a point where it doesn't allow you to sort of achieve your goals to a certain extent.
Yeah. So it's the overthinking, I think, isn't it? It gets to the point where you, like you were saying earlier, you catastrophize things, make things so much bigger in your head. Like something can be coming up and you're thinking about it 4 days before and thinking worst case scenario constantly. And it's almost like you almost manifest it, that it's going to be like that. If you constantly think negative about something, I think thoughts have a lot to do with like how much power you give them and how much energy you're giving something thought-wise. I think a lot of it. And if you're constantly thinking negatively and you're constantly bringing that in all the time, it's almost like you're probably not going to go to that interview, or you're probably not going to do that, or you probably are going to, because you've thought about it so much and made it so big in your head and thought of all the worst case scenarios that it's almost like going to make it happen. So it is important to try and get a grasp of that and awareness around that.
No, completely. So I think it is literally about overthinking things, over analyzing to a certain extent, and also like listening to the thoughts and the feelings to the point where they are just constant in your head all the time. And I think that was the point that I got to, where my self-esteem and everything was just at an all-time low, because I was waking up and these thoughts were just constant all the time. And it was just like, again, I think it was very similar to you, like something needed to change. I needed to change something. And the only way I could do that was start by taking these thoughts and kind of almost like ripping them apart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of the way that you can do it.
It is. I think it's really important to be aware that you can change your thoughts. Just because you're thinking these things all the time doesn't mean that you have to constantly think them for the rest of your life. You are able to change what you're thinking, and it does take effort. It does take a lot of effort, but if you're willing to put in that effort, it can change how you feel. And that, at the end of the day, is what we're all trying to do, isn't it? Change how we feel. And it starts with our thoughts. It starts with what we're thinking and what we're telling ourselves and what we're putting out there, I think.
And it is all about that sort of empowering change, which is something that we are very sort of big on here. And, we've all got that lived experience of something or another. And I think a lot of us have had anxiety in our lives. And now here we are sort of teaching everyone how to sort of manage that and deal with it. And I think the more we sort of discuss on like a person-centered level that our anxiety is normal, but there are ways we can manage it. It's not something you have to have forever. Exactly. I think that is definitely a very powerful thing.
It is. And I think the fact is that we're always going to have anxiety. It's never going to go away. So it's something that we're always going to have. We can't eradicate anxiety, unfortunately.
Nope.
But what we can do, like Jemma said, is manage it, learn how to manage it, and learn how to talk nicer to ourselves, kinder to ourselves, give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, really be aware of what we're saying to ourselves, and what we're giving out, and how much power we're giving negative situations, and really try and sort of challenge that.
See a comment here from Jason. I used to have constant grinding thoughts of self-harm. I changed things by finally being open and honest that I had them and got help. So again, it is very, very, very similar to the anxiety there. And again, I know a lot of people can use self-harm as a coping strategy for when they are anxious, because it stops you thinking about the anxiety, the thought that you're having. It takes it away for a little bit. So I completely get that. And it is important to sort of be open and honest with yourself about, why am I doing this, or what is this telling me?
And reaching out for support. I think, Jason, I think that's what you were sort of touching on there a little bit, is reaching out to someone and saying, look, I'm really struggling with this, I'm finding this really hard, and kind of need a little bit of help with what's going on. I personally struggled with self-harm for a long time, and managed to really get a grip of it about 4 or 5 years ago. But I took a lot of work, took a lot of effort, and I did have to reach out to some people that are really close to me to be able to get that support that I needed, to move on from that and find other healthy coping mechanisms. And I think that's what we're going to go into in a minute, actually, about some coping mechanisms for anxiety.
No, we will definitely have a look at that. Yeah, no, completely. So next question, do you think?
Yeah, can do. Yeah, we're going through them, aren't we?
So I feel overwhelmed with so many anxieties, and it feels too much to tackle. How can I start battling them? So I think something that you can potentially do with that is, if sometimes we do have like way too much, that it is important to sort of, what I did in terms of this, it was not long after I had my son, and I was getting incredibly overwhelmed with all the things you have to do. You as a mum will probably understand this, the things you have to do around the house, the things you have to do to look after them,
the
daily grind of going out and getting food and that kind of stuff. And that in itself made me really anxious, because it was all so overwhelming. Because when you've got so much you need to do, and you can't really think where to start, what I used to do was I used to write down the things that needed to be done the most. So prioritizing the importance. And the one thing that I actually used throughout that was something called an anxiety ladder. So what I used to do was, at the top of the ladder was like the most important things that needed doing, and then you'd work your way down to the least important things. So for an example, say we were out of milk and bread, and I really desperately needed to get that because I need to eat and I need a cup of tea.
Essential.
Whether it'll be warm, whether it'll actually be hot when I get to drink it, the baby is another matter, but it's still tea all the same.
Essential.
So it'll be like, right, so that's my priority. I need to definitely get out today and go and get that. Definitely. And then something like low down the answer, like, as selfish as this sounds, but it was important because I was a new mum, and I was important, and so was my child. Someone had maybe texted me like a week ago, and I still hadn't got around to responding to them, and that was leaving me anxious, because I'm one of these people, like, if you text me, I will make an effort to try and text you back as soon as I can. But sometimes you have this habit where a week later and you still haven't. So I would tend to sort of put that as a very low priority, because it's not like it's immediate. It's not life or death.
You're in charge of a small person.
I'm in charge of a newborn baby. I need to be taken care of me, and I need to be taken care of that. Definitely. So that on the ladder would go up like at the very bottom.
So did that help you to like prioritize your, and so you say it's an anxiety ladder? So was it sort of like, were your Was it just able to sort of prioritize your daily tasks and able to sort of manage your anxiety that way?
Yeah,
just
pretty
so
much.
that you can sort of gain control of what's going on.
Pretty much, because I think, again, it's a bit like the thought thing. So things get overwhelming when you've got so many things or anxieties that you need to tackle. They have to be done. And the best way to sometimes do that is to get them out of your head and get them onto paper. And it's very similar with thoughts as well. We talk about the thought diary, don't we,
Definitely,
in the anxiety workshop,
yeah.
about taking those thoughts and like pulling them apart and trying to work out whether this is actually real or a thought, and what is the evidence to sort of prove that or disprove that.
Like rationalize it.
It's definitely was something that really helps. And if I have got too much going on in my life, is something I still go to. And
good idea.
my son's 8 now. And I still use it.
That's a really, really good idea. I think with anxiety as well, I think with similar to the ladder that you use, I write everything down, like literally just get it all out of my head. I was saying earlier, get it all out and of my head onto paper, and then literally I'll go through each thing and just go, right, well, what can I do? What can I do to make that a little bit less stressful? What can I do with this to make it a little bit less stressful? And actually, also, 9 times out of 10, once I've written it down on paper, it's not half as many things as what I thought. In my head, it feels like there's so many more things.
Exactly.
And then you write it down, and actually, there's only 6 things. There's not like a million, which is what it feels like when it's in my head. So it's really actually quite nice to get like a realistic and logical view of what's going on in your head, because it can all it just gets so much bigger, doesn't it, in your head than what it actually is in your life.
It does. And I can tend to be like that. I can sort of think, oh, there's this, there. Literally, that is how I will sound. And then when I stop and write it down, and you do realise that actually, there's only 4 things there that are making me anxious.
Exactly. And then just tackle each one of them. What can I do about this? Like, even if it was something really massive, you could say, okay, well, maybe I could make a phone call to somebody about that today. Or maybe I can find out what the number is that I need to ring, and it's about making small steps forwards all the time. Like, especially when something's really overwhelming and something's massive and causing a lot of anxiety, it's about really sort of like breaking it down into really small steps. So what can I say? Like, you had to go to the vets with your dog, and you felt a lot of anxiety about leaving the house, a lot of anxiety about driving, a lot of anxiety about the whole situation. You didn't want your pet to be unwell, so you were completely there was anxiety around every single situation. So the first thing you would do, so say like you'd write it down, and then you say, right, today I'm just going to call the vets and make an appointment. That's the first thing you need to do. And the next day you'd write down, right, today I'm going to actually get ready to go to the doctor, to the vets, and sort of make that sort of next step. It's all about breaking it down, instead of just jumping straight into like the worst, the big goal straight away.
So it's doing those little steps, and also to a certain extent, you're kind of like grading what is the steps you need to take to fully manage the anxiety. It reduces it by doing that.
That's what I mean. Completely reduces the anxiety, because you're not just going straight to the vets and taking and everything's sort of snowballing into lots of different things. You're just gonna make a phone call. That's it. That's all you're going to do that day, and it's all about slowly sort of like working your way up to that. Definitely.
That is definitely a thing.
I think another tip for me would be talking to a trusted friend or person. So if you're feeling really, really anxious, if you have a trusted friend or a relative or something like that you feel comfortable talking to, give them a call. Just ring them and just say, do you know what, I'm feeling really anxious today, and just tell them what you're feeling anxious about. If you're able to have that, if you do have that support and you're able to reach out to somebody, and also here at Isorropia, we've got a whole team of people just waiting to talk to you and help you. So it's literally there, that's there for you as well. So if you do have that support and you are able to do that, reaching out and just getting someone else's perspective on something is huge, because perspective, something is really important, I think, because you can think something's a certain way and this is the way it is, and you can be quite black and white in the way that you're thinking sometimes, especially when you're feeling negative. And then somebody else can sort of turn around and go, actually, have you tried looking at this way? Maybe you could sort of go about it this way instead of that way. And you'd be like, oh, I didn't see it like that, or I didn't look at it like that. And then that will completely reduce your anxiety and give you another sort of way of looking at it or tackling that. It's sort of really can be really important and really powerful to get someone else's perspective.
No, completely.
And also just to tell somebody that you're feeling anxious, even if they just listen to you, even if you just sort of just ramble for like 10 minutes about what you're anxious about, sometimes that can really help, just to get it off your chest and just talk to somebody.
I think that's really good. And if someone can help with you to manage the anxieties, having that support network even if it is a friend or us, you know, if you've got those anxieties and you want to talk through them and make sense of them and sort of help get some idea of how to plan, how to manage them, then again, reaching out to a friend is or a service if you're under one is a big thing, because, you know, I think there's a lot of onus on everyone doing things alone, but you don't need to.
No, you don't.
You really don't. There are people out there that will want to help you and will want to hear from you and will want you to reach out.
Definitely. And I think also, there's a lot of stigma around mental health. You know, it is trying not to be stigmatized now, you know, with things like this and lots of other stuff that's going on, which is amazing, but there still is like a little bit of a stigma around it. But actually, sometimes if you talk to someone, you it's somebody that you don't know, or, you know, anybody, a trusted friend, and then you say like, oh, I'm really struggling with this, they might turn around and go, actually, I'm really struggling with something as well. And you're actually able to sort of like, you know, gain that sort of reciprocity or like mutuality and just sort of be able to help each other, because a lot of people won't open up until somebody else opens up sometimes. And it can actually be really helpful for you to sort of like be able to help each other in some situations, and sort of get the other person to open up. One more tip that I've got down, that, well, I've got a couple, but another one that I've got is being aware that the feeling is temporary and that it will pass. I think that's really important for me personally.
It's a big thing.
I really need that, just to be aware that it's only like a wave. It's just a wave. It's not going to be like permanently, I'm not permanently going to feel anxious. It's something that's going to pass and that it's temporary. And being aware of that really does help to kind of like go, okay, just got to ride this out until this is over, and then it's gonna fade away, and I'm not going to feel this anxious all the time constantly.
No, because you know, these feelings, they don't last forever, and they will eventually pass.
Definitely,
they will. Can we move on to the next question?
I think that's it, actually.
Was it? Oh no.
Oh no, we are.
What can you do to start changing anxious thoughts?
Your turn.
Shall I go?
Yeah, go.
Shall I go?
Yeah.
So, I guess one of the things, you know, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So doing things like a thought diary, because I think it's the thoughts that have a lot of power over us when we're anxious. And it's important that we don't take the time to maybe listen to those thoughts as much as we do. So you know, having a thought diary can be really helpful. So you kind of write, it's best to do it sort of after the moment. And it's about finding out sort of what the thought was, and how much sort of fact there was within that thought. So, you know, an example I can give of one I used to have quite often was that I'm useless and I don't deserve love from anybody. Now, what that did was, when I sat down with it and looked at it, it was, where is the evidence to prove that this is true?
Exactly.
Where is that evidence?
Yeah.
There wasn't any I could find, because I have family that love me, I have friends who love me, I had a son who loves me, and at the time a partner who loved me. So where the hell did that come from? And then it's about sort of turning that thought around and thinking like, well, is that fact fiction? And I think that's sort of one of the ways of sort of being able to sort of change your anxious thoughts.
Yeah.
And another way that you can also potentially do it is I was just saying about graded exposure, wasn't I? So if you've got an anxious thought about maybe, I don't know, leaving your house, you know, the first step you could try is you would go to the front door.
Yeah.
You may not even open it that day.
Exactly.
But you go to the front door and then you go sit down. And then the next day or the next week or however long you need, you might open the front door. And then you might stand there for a minute. And then you might then go back in and sit back down. And then the following week, you might actually walk up your garden path. And it's taking those very small steps to sort of, you know, battling those anxious thoughts and sort of getting ourselves sort of to realize that they're not. Yeah. They're not. Nothing's out there is gonna,
exactly,
you know, hurt us.
Not as scary as what you think.
Yeah,
definitely. I think, yeah, it's definitely about taking those little steps, and you can use that in any sort. That's that example in any sort of situation. You can use it emotionally, you can use it physically, you can use it in lots of different situations, I think. But changing your anxious thoughts, I think personally for me, is just completely flip it. Don't just challenge it. Just literally grab it and change it. I think it's the best thing to do. I think it's, for me, is if I'm feeling really, really anxious about something, I will just change it and go, you can do this. You can do this, and you will do this. And it's about, I have to push myself. Everybody's different. Some people have to do things in a gradual way, gradual exposure. I have to do what's called flooding. And it's just literally just do it. Just literally face the fear and do it anyway. Be scared and do it anyway, and just push through it. Because I know once I've done something once that I'm really scared about doing, it's going to be easier the next time. And I do just need to push myself out of my comfort zone. And gradual exposure for me just wouldn't work. I would just take years probably to do something. I just know what I'm like. I need to just push myself. And also sometimes that motivation isn't there, which is okay. Sometimes motivation isn't always there, but discipline is there. And it's kind of a little bit about being your own parent in a way, I think. And you kind of just need to go, right, just get this done. Stop overthinking it now. Worst case scenarios, push it to one side. Just literally just take that step and just do it. Step out of your comfort zone. And then once I have done it, I do feel so much better. I might have been really anxious in the process, but now I know next time I do it, it's going to be easier. Exactly. And it's going to get easier and easier and easier the more I do it. So it is about pushing myself personally just out of my comfort zone and just biting the bullet and doing it. So
no, that's definitely
everybody works differently, don't they? I think it's important to remember that as well.
And I think it's also important to realize that you matter.
100%.
Because I think a lot of what anxiety can sometimes stem from is not believing in ourselves 100%. And not thinking we can do things that that we feel we should achieve. So to be able to doing things like self-caring and maybe even things like, I don't know, meditations and that kind of thing, that's time for you. And your yoga, for example,
exactly.
That was kind of a way of you showing that you matter and that you deserve that time.
You're in lockdown.
You're in lockdown with 3 kids. And you got to homeschool.
It's carnage.
You need that yoga to make you matter.
Honestly, Gemma, I needed it more than ever. Literally, I needed it so much. I needed something to be able to just get onto this level where I'm okay to deal with daily activities and 3 children. It was a lot. But it really did help, and stuff like that really does help. And like you say, remembering that you matter, that you're important, that you're a priority. And being kinder to yourself, it's really something that to be aware of and keep that into the forefront of your mind. I know it's difficult in everyday life, but remembering that is really important.
Completely.
Key.
I believe that was the last question.
I think that was.
That was.
That's us done.
So that was us talking about anxiety. So I hope everyone who watched or will watch found that useful, and obviously do bear in mind that we are online and that we are also able to take referrals.
Yes, we are.
For anyone who may wish to come under the service, if you may have liked what you've seen. It's just a little bit of a taster about what we do within, our workshops and that kind of thing. So it gets you a bit of an idea. But that was us.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for watching, guys.
Have a good day, guys.
Take care.
See you later.